He chopped up his mother into over 1,000 pieces and not only fed some of her remains to the family dog, but also ate some himself. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Maria Soledad Gomez. Alberto Sanchez Gomez was an unemployed 28-year-old man who had just been kicked out of the flat that he shared with his mother Maria, and so he was forced to live on the streets and essentially couch surf. Alberto had a history of drug and alcohol abuse, and he was very well known to the police as he had a lengthy history of violence against his 69-year-old mother Maria. In early 2019, Alberto would turn up at Maria's flat in Madrid, completely ignoring the restraining order that she had out against him. The two got into a ferocious argument which resulted in Alberto wrapping his hands around his mother's neck and choking her to death. Using a carpenter's saw and then several kitchen knives, he then spent hours upon hours meticulously dismembering his mother's body, chopping her up into over 1,000 pieces. For at least 2 weeks, Alberto would continuously eat his mother's remains, both in raw form and he actually cooked some as well. Alongside himself, he also fed some remains to the family dog. On the 21st of February 2019, a family friend made a concerned phone call to the police as they hadn't heard from Maria in a very long time. It was around about a month since they last heard from her, and no one had seen her or managed to get in touch with her. When officers arrived to the flat in Madrid, they would be met by Alberto, who had blood stained on his face and on his hands. When asked where Maria was, he coldly confessed without even an ounce of emotion in his voice what he had done, telling the officers that he had choked his mother to death, dismembered her into over 1,000 pieces, and ate some of her remains. Officers at the scene would discover a pot in the kitchen that was in the process of cooking some of Maria's remains. Other pieces of her flesh were found stored in Tupperware boxes, and her bones were scattered throughout the flat. Hauntingly, however, her decapitated head, her heart, and her hands were all found neatly tucked in her bed. Alberto Sanchez Gomez would be arrested for the murder of his mother, and when asked why he did it, he simply said that Maria made his life impossible. During his trial, he tried to claim that he had a psychotic break when the murder took place and that he didn't even remember committing the murder. However, the jury did not believe him, and he would be found guilty of the murder of Maria Soledad Gomez. He would be handed a sentence of 15 years and 5 months imprisonment.
She zipped her boyfriend into a suitcase, filmed him begging for help, and she just went to bed while he was still in there.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres Jr. lived in Winter Park, Florida. Their relationship was off again, on again, and heavily affected by alcohol. Police had been called to their apartment multiple times for domestic disturbances, and they both had been arrested for incidents that involved each other. Neighbors described hearing loud arguments, broken items, and complete chaos. Their relationship was not stable, it was already spiraling. On February 23rd of 2020, Sarah and Jorge spent the day in Sarah's apartment drinking heavily. According to Sarah, the mood was good, they were laughing, drinking wine, and just spending time together. And at some point of that evening, they started to play hide and seek. Jorge climbed into a large blue suitcase and then Sarah zipped it closed. Instead of letting him out, Sarah grabbed her phone and started to record multiple videos. In these videos, you can hear Jorge trapped inside of the suitcase, struggling to breathe and begging Sarah to let him out. He says he can't breathe, he's asking for help, he's pleading with Sarah, but what does she do? She just mocks him. Sarah laughs and refuses to unzip the suitcase, and at one point she tells him, "This is what it feels like when you cheat on me," and she continues recording. Once she was done recording those videos, she went upstairs and went to sleep while Jorge was still in that suitcase. The next morning, Sarah called 911 and told the operator that she found Jorge unresponsive inside of that suitcase. Once first responders had arrived, they determined that Jorge had been dead for hours. When Sarah spoke with investigators, she told them that she didn't mean to harm Jorge. She believed that they were just playing a game and that he could get out on his own even though the suitcase was zipped. But once the investigators reviewed the videos on Sarah's phone, her story completely collapsed. Sarah was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, and she rejected a 15-year plea deal and chose to go to trial. In October of 2024, a jury found Sarah guilty, and on December 2nd, she was sentenced to life in prison under Florida law.
Prison riots terrify me because what do you mean you've lost control and armed prisoners are escaping? It was the 20th of June 2023 in Tamara, Honduras. The Women's Center for Social Adaptation was overcrowded, and honestly, this is how so many prison riots start. It was actually double its intended capacity, and inside like so many prisons, there were a lot of dangerous gangs. And this prison was known for violence. People regularly died there like it was no joke. But what was about to happen was like nothing anybody had ever seen before. On this particular day, tensions were bubbling over and soon there was just a massive brawl that broke out. It was absolute chaos. One minute it was just a normal day inside the prison. The next it was sheer terror. Security cameras were being smashed. Fires were being set. People were being killed. One inmate was like, suddenly a gang just burst into a cell block and opened fire. Inmates were shooting other inmates. Like, how they got their hands on firearms, I will never understand. They'd apparently smuggled in grenades and machine Gs. But those were the least brutal deaths. Inmates sprayed other inmates with flammable liquid, locked them in their cells and set them on fire. And they just burned to death in front of them. Honestly, it was absolutely horrifying. And these inmates were laughing as they were doing this. Now, the media soon got wind that something absolutely horrifying was going on at the prison because they could see thick black smoke billowing out of the roof. But honestly, people were too scared to even go near the prison. Inmates were being attacked with machetes. The lucky survivors described it as being in a literal hell. Fires that were set inside of the prison by these gangs were actually so hot and powerful that the metal bed frames were twisted by the heat. And it didn't take long for the bodies to just start piling up. There were 46 deaths. All families rushed over to the morgue and honestly held their breaths as they waited for news of their loved ones. Now, ultimately, with what evidence that they could salvage, they found that 2 women were the ringleaders who already had the apt nicknames Crazy and Psycho. Military police ended up taking over the prison security, and they were instructed to basically build a new maximum security prison to house the most dangerous inmates. It was going to be like on an island in the middle of the sea. Now, if you're fascinated by prison riots like I am, I actually did a huge deep dive of the 1993 Lucasville prison siege. It's terrifying, it's fascinating, it's heartbreaking, and it's over on my podcast, The Bourne Investigation.
18 months after his wife died, he married her caregiver, and that caregiver is now being accused of not only abusing him, but robbing him of millions of dollars. This story is the true definition of never knowing what goes on behind closed doors. This is 91-year-old Forrest Preston, and he's the founder of Life Care Centers, which is a nursing home chain founded in 1970. To this day, he is the sole owner of the company, which has over 200 nursing facilities and assisted living communities in 28 states. So in 2018, suddenly and seemingly out of nowhere, Forrest married 49-year-old Kim Phuong Nguyen. This happened just 18 months after his wife died, and what's crazy is the fact that Kim was his late wife's caregiver. They got married without any of Forrest's family knowing, so this was understandably a huge shock to his 4 kids. Ever since then, Kim and his family haven't really gotten along, but according to a recent court filing, Kim is now being accused of abusing Forrest both physically and financially, and the findings and claims from this investigation are bizarre. Court documents state that Forrest has suffered from different stages of dementia since 2010, and he's currently disabled and unable to care for himself. Since the pandemic, Kim has reportedly isolated Forrest from his family and company officials. Meanwhile, and this is all alleged, she has funneled millions of his dollars worth of real estate and cash to herself and her family. Anytime Forrest has business calls, she will screen them, and not only that, she will attend all of his board meetings. It's being said that she makes all of his decisions for him and sometimes won't let him speak to important figures like lenders for months at a time, even in time-sensitive situations. Kim has also reportedly accused his employees of having affairs and would accept bribes, and she even threatened to kill a high-level life care executive who argued with her one time. She eventually got that executive fired. According to the legal filing, Kim once flashed a gun that she was wearing on her waistband to Forrest's family, saying that she would use it to protect him. Forrest's son has now filed for a conservatorship for his dad because he feels like he's not able to make the sound decisions needed to keep life care centers running. He feels that it's already bad enough that Kim has stolen so much money from Forrest, but now it seems like that isn't enough. Now it seems like she wants total control over the nursing home chain, and the decisions that she's been making are quite literally putting the company in jeopardy. It's gotten so bad that lenders are now refusing to move forward with the company until it can essentially get everything under control. Now the company is behind $100 million in deferred maintenance and equipment that hasn't properly been taken care of. It's had to recently close down or sell several facilities just to keep its head above water. What's really really concerning is the fact that the last time Forrest was really seen in public was 2 years ago, and Kim was right by his side. His son began to worry about him and the company when, out of nowhere, Forrest suddenly said that he wanted to make his new wife the CEO of the company, even though she is really not qualified for that position. That, and when company executives and board members started contacting him, asking him what was really going on, and pretty much informing him that the whole company will likely fail if it continues down this path. Because of the recent legal accusations, a judge has ordered Forrest to undergo medical exams to determine whether or not he is mentally able to continue in his position with the company. He is going to be interviewed away from Kim and her family by a court-appointed attorney who will act as his guardian. Kim will also be interviewed as well. This entire case was filed under the Tennessee Adult Protection Act. This is just really sad to me because he quite literally dedicated his life to caring for the elderly and making sure they have a safe community. And now at 91, he's being taken advantage of. This isn't just a one-off situation either. People think that once you turn a certain age that you can pretty much just do whatever you want to them. And it's scary how often this happens.
These parents tried selling their 2-month-old baby for some beer and $1,000, but get this, someone actually paid. So here we have Darian, he's 21, and Shaylin, she's 20, and their parents, if you could even call them that. And apparently being responsible for a newborn was too hard for them, so what do? They pack up their baby and head to a campground in Rogers, Arkansas. While they're there, they randomly decide to say, you know what? Let's just sell the baby for some extra cash. I swear, I'm not making this up. So these two geniuses start walking around the campground, literally asking random people, hey, do you want a baby? We'll give it to you for $1,000 and a case of adult juice. I'm sorry, what? At first people think they're joking, right? Because who in their right mind would actually say that out loud? But then Darian whips out this handwritten contract, and I kid you not, it says, I, Darian Urban and Shaylene Ellers are signing the rights of our baby over for $1,000. And at the bottom, it says, after signing this, you can't change your minds and you can't contact us. Someone hand these two Lawyer of the Year awards, because what the heck? But believe it or not, someone actually said yes. First, they give the baby over to some guy named Richard Crawford in exchange for adult juice. Now listen, I don't know what Ricky's intentions are, so I'm gonna keep my judgment to myself, but then he passes the baby off to another man named Cody. And Cody, he actually signs the contract. He tells them, I'll bring the $1,000 later via a cashier's check, and he even records the entire thing to make it legal. If you need a lawyer, forget Morgan & Morgan, just get these guys. Now with Cody, I'll give him a little bit of credit because after the deal's done, reality kind of hit him and he was like, wait a second. They just sold their baby to me. So he walks over to the campground manager and he's like, hey, this couple just tried to sell their kid to me. And that's when the manager calls the police, thank God, because who knows what would have happened after that. By the time the officers show up, Darian and Shaylene are gone. They did find the baby, but his condition was really, really bad. He smelled strongly of ammonia and waste. He had severe rashes, open blisters, and swelling all over his skin. And there was even dog hair inside of his diaper at 2 months old. Eventually, police did track both Darian and Shaylene and arrested them both. Shaylene is still in jail, but Darian was actually released, and I really wish I could say this kind of thing was rare, but honestly, it happens a lot more than you think. People always ask, oh my god, how can anyone do this? But the real question is, how many people do this and never get caught? Thank you for being here with me and dissecting this really weird case today. Let's hope they don't have any more kids, but I love you guys. I will see you in my next video. Mwah, group hug.
This girl looked like a sweet pageant queen, but in reality, she was deeply jealous of her boyfriend's toddler. 18-year-old Trinity Madison Pogue was living in Georgia, and she was attending Georgia Southwestern State University to become a nurse. On social media, she looked like a classic pageant girl, full glam, crown pictures, and big smiles. She had been crowned Miss Donaldsonville, which was a local title, and it made her kind of like a hometown beauty queen. But behind that polished image was a really dark pattern of jealousy and resentment. In 2023, Trinity started dating 24-year-old Julian Williams. And he wasn't just a boyfriend, he was also a father to an 18-month-old son named Romeo Angeles, whose nickname was JD. JD mostly lived with Julian and Julian's sister as they were the primary caregivers. From the outside looking in, it looked like a young couple trying to make it work with a toddler in the mix, but in reality, Trinity did not like JD at all. Trinity was jealous of two things: the fact that Julian would give more attention to his son than her, and also the existence of the baby's mother. Trinity wanted a future and children with Julian one day, but she didn't want to share him with a child that was already here and that wasn't hers. And she wasn't quiet about how she felt about JD. She would often text her roommate how she resented him, that she was so angry with him, she wishes that she could run over him with her car, and even told Julian that she didn't have his best interests at heart. In January of 2024, Julian brought JD to Trinity's college dorm to spend the night. Mind you, it's a freshman college dorm. It's a tiny room, there's no crib, and it's not baby-proofed at all. Julian and JD slept on an air mattress, and sometime during the night, JD rolled off the air mattress and fell, but he was fine. There was no injury, it was just a normal little tumble, and everyone went back to sleep. Next morning, everything seemed completely fine. JD was up and moving around. He was eating some chips and even sipping some Mountain Dew. Later that day, they were all getting hungry, so Julian stepped out to grab a pizza while Trinity stayed behind with JD. During those 35 minutes that Julian was gone, Trinity snapped at JD. While Julian was still out, Trinity called him to let him know that JD wasn't breathing. 911 was also called, and once help arrived, JD was fully unresponsive, no pulse, and no breathing. JD was rushed to the hospital and doctors tried to save him, but his injuries were too severe and unfortunately he passed away. An autopsy was done on JD and it revealed that he had a skull fracture, brain bleeding and swelling, and major trauma in his torso and internal organs. When investigators questioned Trinity, she kept changing her story. At first she said that maybe he fell, and then she said, oh, maybe that he fell off the bed. She was just trying to frame it as an accident. But the injuries and medical evidence with her story did not match. On January 20th of 2024, Trinity was arrested and charged with felony murder, aggravated battery, and cruelty to children in the first degree. In court, the jury saw text messages from Trinity stating that she felt stuck with JD, she had anger towards him, and she didn't have his best interest at heart. Prosecutors stated that this wasn't a random accident, it was a result of jealousy and resentment. In December of 2025, the judge found Trinity guilty and sentenced her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years.
He scraped out his own eyeballs and ate one while he was in custody, but why he was there in the first place was even worse. It was March 2004 in Sherman, Texas, when all hell broke loose. Andre Thomas was no stranger to violence. In fact, he'd grown up in a household where it was just poverty-stricken and he'd seen his mum get abused regularly. 10 years before he was even born, his nan's husband had shot and killed his own uncle. But he seemed like a good kid and he seemed like he wanted better for himself and his life. He went to church regularly and everybody said what a respectful little boy he was. But when he turned 10, it felt like his personality started to change. He was telling people he could see things that weren't even there, like angels and demons. Now, nobody really knew if this was just a kid with an overactive imagination. I mean, I had invisible friends when I was little. Or whether it was a sign of something more serious. Either way, he started smoking and drinking from a young age, and when he was just 12 years old, he was getting in trouble with police. Over the years, he stole a car, got arrested, and ended up in a young offenders institute. It seemed like he was spiraling downhill. But something happened in 1999 that seemed to be kind of like a turning point, and maybe he was going to change his life. Him and his young girlfriend had a baby. Now, they were incredibly young, but Andre was adamant, like, I'm gonna be there to support my child and my girlfriend. He took on several jobs just to make ends meet, and he really did seem to be supporting this new family that he'd created. In 2001, when he was 18 and she was just 17, he married Laura Boren. And things were okay for a little while. I mean, from the outside looking in, they seemed like a really happy family, but it didn't stay that way long. Just 4 months into the marriage, they ended up breaking up. And I guess, you know, they were young. Things change very quickly at that age, especially when you have a child. But Laura seemed to move on very, very quickly, and this really devastated Andre. She ended up dating this new guy and also having a baby daughter with him. And obviously, she was well within her rights to do that, but he was heartbroken. He just didn't seem to be able to move on. He started not showing up at work, which wasn't like him, and just experiencing a real plummet in his mental health. He was having these really intense delusions, and when Laura found out about it, she was like, my son is my priority and I want to make sure that he's safe, and I don't know if I can trust him to be around Andre. But as valid as her concerns were, this sadly only made Andre spiral even more. He started to believe in his own mind that she was Jezebel and that his son was the Antichrist. He started behaving very, very strangely, walking around with duct tape over his mouth and refusing to talk to anyone. It was clear that his mental health was spiraling and nobody was really helping him. I mean, he actually even showed up at a mental health facility and said that he wanted to walk in front of traffic, and they just fobbed him off. As if that wasn't bad enough, he ended up in A&E after stabbing himself in the chest. But instead of like sectioning him or something for his and others' safety, they actually just kind of let him wander off back into the world. Sadly, things were about to take a darker turn. 2 days later, he broke into his ex-wife's house. She was alone inside the building with her 2 young children. And honestly, what he did next is like something from a deranged horror film. He stabbed her to death first and pulled out her lung thinking it was her heart. He then absolutely horrifically stabbed the 13-month-old little baby and his 4-year-old son, Andre Jr. He then cut out both of their hearts. He then stabbed himself in the chest and lay there expecting to die, and waited and waited and waited and was really confused when he didn't die. He eventually was like, I don't know why I'm still alive, and then just stood up and walked out of the house. Then when he got home, he placed a chilling voicemail. Sherry, this is Andre. I need y'all's help. Something bad is happening to me, and it keeps happening, and I don't know what's going on. I need some help. I think I'm in hell. I need help. Somebody needs to come and help me. I need help bad. I'm desperate. I'm afraid to go to sleep. So when you get this message, come by the house, please. Hello? He then just showed up at the police department and randomly announced God had wanted him to kill those victims, so he'd had to do as he was told. Bear in mind he still had a gaping chest wound at this point, so they rushed him to hospital, and after he got medical attention, he was arrested. But things were about to get even more gruesome. After he was arrested, he scraped out his own eyeballs with his bare hands and ate one. Now, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and originally declared incompetent to stand trial because it's very clear to me that he was having severe mental health problems. But one psychiatrist said that he was exaggerating symptoms to appear more insane. Guys, what do you think? Because I don't think you scrape out your own eyeballs and eat one if you're just exaggerating symptoms to get a more lenient sentence. He was ultimately convicted of capital murder and given the death sentence, but it's hugely controversial, and loads of people argue that actually he should be held in a mental health facility, not given the death sentence. After a bunch of appeals and petitions, a hearing to decide his fate is actually scheduled for March 2026.
An autistic boy was left alone with his baby brother, and by the end of the night, one was and the other was being sent to prison. Jacob was 17, diagnosed with autism and bipolar disorder, and that day his parents left him alone with his 1-year-old baby brother Joshua. By 8 a.m. their entire mobile home was on fire, like fully engulfed. Fire spread uncontrollably throughout every room, including baby Joshua's. Jacob panics, his brain goes into fight or flight mode. He runs outside screaming and banging on neighbors' doors asking for help while his brother is trapped inside. He tried to run back into the house, but his neighbors stopped him before he got hurt because no one knew what he was trying to do. No one knew that his brother was still trapped in there until it was too late. Baby Joshua suffocated inside that house with those flames and did not make it. By the time first responders arrived, they found Jacob sobbing while beating his head into the pavement in huge amounts of regret. But everything after that moved so fast that their parents didn't even have time to grieve one child before they were at risk of losing the other. He was interrogated for 5 hours without allowing his parents to be present. They called him a cold-blooded for changing his story a few times, as if trauma doesn't shatter memory and logic. And on top of that, being on the spectrum isn't very helpful when it comes to high stress situations. At first he said a space heater caused it, then he threw a pillow at the space heater, then maybe he lit up the pillow and threw it at the space heater. Was it confusion or was it fear of being blamed? Firefighters said there might have been 2 or 3 points where fires were started, lining up with his final confession about making fires in different rooms because he was obsessed with flames. But even his neighbors and parents vouched for him. They said that he would never hurt Joshua. Ever. But despite all of that support, he was still arrested. Jacob pleaded guilty, but not to murder. He took a plea deal for involuntary and unlawful conduct towards a child. In the courtroom, he sobbed and cried. He broke down saying, I didn't mean to hurt my little brother. He was my best friend, right before they sentenced him to 15 years in prison. But here's what nobody's really talked about. Jacob didn't serve the full sentence. He spent only about half of that time behind bars, and then they quietly released him in 2022 to go live with his parents. And maybe it was an accident, maybe it was misjudged, but please, can we ask, why was a teen with autism left alone with a baby in the first place? We really need to be mindful of the decisions that we make on a daily, because this one really broke my heart. Thank you for being here with me. If you are still here, it's always nice talking with all my crime-solving besties, even if it's through a screen. I love you guys. Be safe. Group hug.
Nothing scares me more than when someone vanishes into thin air. Hana Kobayashi disappeared on November 11th after missing her flight at LAX. But before she disappeared, she sent a string of bizarre text messages. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance are strange, so let's talk about it. So on November 8th of this year, Hana flew from her home in Maui to Los Angeles, and her plan was to then get on a connecting flight to New York to visit family and attend a concert. Hana was super excited to go to this concert and to the Museum of Modern Art in New York, as she is an aspiring photographer and a really good one at that. She spent thousands of dollars on this trip well in advance, so she was super excited about it. But after landing at LAX, Hana accidentally missed her connecting flight to New York, so to kill time while waiting for a last-minute flight to open up, she decided to go into downtown Los Angeles to sightsee. To be more specific, she went to the Grove Shopping Center, which is about 10 miles away from the airport. On November 9th, Hana was seen at a bookstore called Taschin, and a day later, she attended a Nike event in the same area where she took this photo. She's also seen in the background of a YouTube video at the same event. On November 11th, Hana's mom texted her asking if she had made it to New York yet, in which Hana replied, not yet. This is when things start to get strange. Hana's friends and family then began receiving a string of bizarre text messages from Hana's phone. In one text to a friend, Hana said that she got tricked into pretty much giving away all of her funds from someone she thought she loved. In another text, she said, quote, "Deep hackers wiped my identity, stole all of my funds, and have had me in a mind since Friday." End quote. The last time anyone heard from Hana was this final text. She said she had a spiritual awakening, was charging her phone, and then heading back to the airport to go to New York. She said she might need some help getting there, and then it's a long story, but she told her family that she was scared. After this, Hana vanished, and no one has heard from her since. Her phone soon went dead, but what's odd is that her family and friends say that these last texts don't really sound like her. She was reportedly calling them hun and babe, which is something that she doesn't really ever say. Her final post on Instagram was the same day, and it was a photo she took at the Nike event the day prior. After a while of not hearing from Hana and the odd text messages coming from her phone, her family reported her missing to the Los Angeles Police Department. During the investigation, police found that Hana's phone last pinged at 4 p.m. on November 11th at LAX, which is the day she was sending those weird texts. But after this, her phone went dead. Adding to the mystery is the fact that before she disappeared, Hana sent money via Venmo to two separate people, who her family does not recognize. Recently, surveillance footage has emerged that shows Hana the night she went missing, but it only brings more questions than answers. On the evening of November 11th, well after her phone died, Hana was seen on security footage near the Crypto Arena, which is about 20 miles from the airport. Her family says that from that footage, it's clear that she wasn't in good condition. Hana was then seen later that same night on security footage at the Hawthorne Lenox light rail station. She was not alone this time though. She was with an unknown man, and according to her family, she looked really tired and disassociated. It's not clear what happened to Hana after this, and it's like she vanished into thin air, but her family believes that she has been abducted. The FBI is now involved in this case, and there have been multiple searches for Hana, but she is still missing. Authorities are in the process of getting any extra security footage that they can find, as well as her phone records and bank statements. They're also trying to access all of her social media accounts to see if that can provide any clues into what happened to her. One thing that's important to note is that Hana's ex-boyfriend was also traveling on that same flight from Maui to Los Angeles. They didn't sit together or even speak on the flight though, but he went because they'd already booked this trip prior to breaking up. He has reportedly been cooperative with authorities and Hana's family, and he did board that connecting flight to New York that Hana missed. I just wanted to point that out because it will come up when you research Hana's case. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is that Hana's family says that she doesn't suffer from any mental illness, and she's not on any medication that could possibly cause her to have an adverse reaction or anything like that. It's now been over a week since Hana made any contact with her family, which is extremely out of character for her. She would never just leave her family like this. If you're in the downtown Los Angeles area or possibly even Skid Row or Compton, please keep your eyes peeled. These are some of her characteristics and what she was last seen wearing. You can also join this Facebook group to keep up with information directly from the family. If you have any information, please contact the number on the screen.
This is likely the most terrifying true crime case that ever happened on Halloween night. Halloween has always been my favorite holiday. As a kid, I looked forward to trick-or-treating all year. I mean, who does not love free candy? And I'm sure all, or at least most of you guys listening, remember the adults in your life checking through your Halloween candy after you got done trick-or-treating to see if there was anything that looked sketchy, suspicious candy that appeared opened or maybe tampered with.
For most parents, the biggest fear for them on Halloween night is that some sicko laced their child's candy with hallucinogenics or razor blades. I'm sure we've all heard it. Check your candy for razor blades, needles, substances, anything that looks suspicious. This fear actually stems from Halloween night 1974, when an 8-year-old boy suddenly died less than an hour after eating his Halloween candy. And then more poisoned candy was found in the stashes of other trick-or-treaters. But as we dive deeper into this case, you'll find that the truth is more evil and sinister than you could ever believe. The O'Brien family appeared to be your all-American, Southern, middle-class Christian family. You had the father, Ronald O'Brien, his wife, Danae, and their 2 children, 8-year-old Timothy and 5-year-old Elizabeth. That Halloween night, 1974, Ronald took his 2 kids trick-or-treating with a group of their family friends and their kids in the neighboring town of Pasadena, Texas. The group are all trick-or-treating together and it all seems normal, lighthearted fun, until they get to a house where the lights were all turned off. Typically, this means that no one's home, maybe they're out trick-or-treating themselves, or they're just not handing out candy. But the kids chose to go up and knock on the door again, and after no one answered, they just scurried off to the next house. While the entire group was out trick-or-treating, Ronald O'Brien was hanging back a few steps. I mean, this is definitely something my own father would do when we would go trick-or-treating. Me and my siblings, or me and my friends would be running ahead, and he'd be hanging back a few steps, but definitely still keeping an eye out on us. And since Ronald was hanging back a little bit, he says that house that had the lights turned off actually did open the door after the kids had already run off to the next house. He said whoever was inside opened the door, handed him 5 pixie sticks before shutting the door. So Ronald caught up with the rest of the group and handed out the 5 pixie sticks to the 5 kids that were in his group. They actually did not trick-or-treat for much longer after this because it started to rain pretty heavy. So Ronald took 8-year-old Timothy and 5-year-old Elizabeth back home, and of course immediately when the kids get home, they dump out their candy ready to dive in. But their father said, hey, it's close to bedtime, you guys had a big, busy day, it's a really exciting day, so why don't you each pick 1 piece of candy you can have before bedtime and then you can have more tomorrow. So 8-year-old Timothy started eating the pixie stick, but almost immediately started to complain that it did not taste right, that it was bitter and gross. So his father gave him some Kool-Aid to kind of wash that taste out of his mouth, but within minutes, he started to complain that his stomach hurt, like violently hurt. He runs to the bathroom and actually starts to get sick. And as 8-year-old Timothy is getting sick in the bathroom, he actually begins to convulse. He's violently shaking. His father rushes to his care. He's holding his son, and then his son goes limp and becomes unresponsive in his arms. 911 is called, and the ambulance rushed to save Timothy, but unfortunately, they were too late. And 8-year-old Timothy passed away in the ambulance on the way to the hospital less than 1 hour after eating the pixie stick. The autopsy confirmed everyone's worst nightmare, that Timothy had been poisoned by potassium cyanide that was found in the pixie stick. There was actually so much cyanide in that 1 pixie stick that it could have killed 4 full-grown adults. Immediately, there's mass panic throughout the community and then throughout the country. Some sicko is poisoning kids with their own Halloween candy. Parents just throw out all their kids' candy, especially if anyone had gotten pixie sticks. The authorities' #1 concern were to locate those other 4 pixie sticks that Ronald had gotten from that house with the lights turned off. 1 pixie stick was found in his 5-year-old daughter's candy, and then they were able to find 2 other pixie sticks in the Halloween candy of 2 other children. But the parents of the child that got the 5th pixie stick could not find it in their child's Halloween candy. Imagine the terror. Their son had already gone to bed for the night after having some Halloween candy, so now they're terrified, we're gonna go upstairs and find our child dead. Luckily, their son was okay. He was actually fast asleep in bed, but what his parents found is probably a chilling sight they'll never be able to get out of their minds. Their son was sleeping in his bed while clutching on to the pixie stick. Turns out whoever laced all these pixie sticks with cyanide had stapled them all back up closed. And this child could not open up the pixie stick and had actually fallen asleep trying to get it open. So now authorities need to find what house did these pixie sticks come from. Ronald said he couldn't quite remember which house the pixie sticks came from, so they bring him up and down each street that they went trick-or-treating on that night, and eventually he points to a house and says it was from that house. But the man that owned that house actually lived alone, and he was actually working that Halloween night until 11 p.m. Hundreds of people saw him at work. It was an airtight alibi. He was definitely not in that house handing out pixie sticks. So now authorities only have one terrifying theory left. The only person that they knew for 100% certainty that had those pixie sticks in their hand was Ronald O'Brien, the father of 8-year-old Timothy. So Ronald O'Brien appeared to be your average Joe. He was a married father of 2, he was a respected member of the church, and had never gotten in trouble a day in his life. But things are not always as they seem. Ronald was actually over $100,000 in debt. He had trouble keeping a job. He had had 21 jobs in the past 10 years and was about to be fired from his current job because they thought that he was stealing from them. He was close to losing his home and also losing his car. In the January before his son was murdered, Ronald took life insurance policies out on both his children, his 8-year-old son and his 5-year-old daughter, for $10,000 each. And then the month before his son was murdered, he bumped both those policies up to $30,000 each. And then, only a few days before Halloween, Ronald bumped them up again to $50,000 each, which in today's money is over $300,000. And he did all of this without his wife knowing. And on the morning after his son was murdered, only a mere few hours later, Ronald called the life insurance company to find out how he could cash out on his son's life insurance policy. And then at his son's funeral, Ronald was telling people, pretty much bragging about this vacation that he was planning for himself, that he was going to pay for with his 8-year-old son's death. Apparently for over a year, Ronald was asking a bunch of people about cyanide. Where do you get cyanide? How much does it take to kill someone? And he went to multiple stores trying to buy it. And then on November 5th, only a few days after his son was murdered, Ronald was arrested for killing his son. He was arrested on 1 count of murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. During his trial, it took the jury less than 45 minutes to come back and say that Ronald O'Brien was guilty of all charges, and he was sentenced to death. Ronald O'Brien was executed on March 31st, 1984 at the age of 39 years old, and he maintained his innocence until the day he died. And actually a large crowd of people came to cheer on his execution, and some of them even screamed as they were executing him, "Trick or treat." This case truly terrifies me, that a man would kill his own child for $50,000, actually attempt to kill both of his children, and kill 3 of other people's children just to cover it up. And with the kids' own Halloween candy, on a night like Halloween no less, that's supposed to be like the day for kids. Lighthearted fun for kids. Kids should not have to be worried about some weirdos putting something in their candy, let alone their own father. You have to be one sick, vile individual to do that. If you watched the end of this video, thank you so much, and I hope we can all remember Timothy O'Brien's story this upcoming Halloween. If you guys are doing anything this weekend, please stay safe. I love you guys so much. Please let me know what case you want to see me cover next, and I will see you guys all tomorrow with another video.
This teenager committed the perfect murder, and if it wasn't for her opening her mouth, she would have gotten away with it. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Stephen Robards. In 1992, 15-year-old Marie Robards would walk into her usually quiet home in Granbury, Texas, when she noticed some weird sounds coming from upstairs. She creeped up the stairs to investigate, only to discover her stepfather, Frank Burrows, in bed with another woman. Marie immediately told her mother Beth, expecting Beth to leave Frank, to kick him to the curb and tell him where to go, but that didn't happen. Instead of Beth blaming Frank and holding him accountable for his actions, she instead blamed herself. She thought that she had been neglecting Frank, not giving him enough attention because she had been working so much as a nurse inside a nearby hospital. Following this, Marie's attitude towards Frank completely shifted, and she began defying him, not listening to him, and was always in the middle of arguments between him and Beth. Eventually realising that her mother was going to stick beside Frank, Marie decided to leave the family home. She just couldn't bear or stand the sight of Frank. After just a couple of days of living with her maternal grandparents, Marie realised just how much she was missing her mother Beth, and so pulling together every single cent that she had, she ordered a taxi and made the 45-minute journey, only to be told that she wasn't allowed to move back in. Frank was not going to allow it under any circumstances, no matter how much Marie apologised, cried and begged to be allowed back. Adamant that she didn't want to go back with her maternal grandparents, Beth decided that Marie could move in with her biological father, 38-year-old Stephen Robards. Stephen was elated that Marie was going to be moving back in with him. Since his separation with Beth when Marie was still an infant, paired with his struggling mental health issues, Stephen didn't get a proper opportunity to bond with with his daughter. Now he was medicated and in therapy, his mental health was leaps and bounds better, had a stable job working as a postman, and he was in a healthy relationship with a woman named Sandra. For him, now having Marie move in with him was just the cherry on top of the cake. He actually only lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and as soon as he learned that Marie was going to be moving in with him, he immediately applied for a bigger place so that Marie could have her own bedroom. When she first started staying with Stephen, she had to sleep on a sofa bed in the dining room. Stephen tried everything that he could to make Marie feel welcome, comfortable and safe around him. He would take her to many restaurants for tea and for breakfast. He would take her to the cinema and all sorts of fun things like that, but no matter what he did, it was never good enough for Marie. She would spend hours upon hours on end on the phone to Beth, just crying and begging Beth to come back home. She would be refused each and every time. However, by February 1993, Marie had come up with a plan where Beth would have no other option but to let her move back home. And this plan was deadly. While sitting in a science lesson at her high school, Marie waited for the perfect opportunity when her teacher was distracted to have a look through lots of little bottles that were for some reason inside of the classroom until she came across the perfect one. The bottle that she picked up had a skull and crossbone on it, along with the word poison in big, bold, thick red letters. She would steal some of the poison, taking it home and mixing it into some refried Mexican beans that she was cooking for her father, Stephen. She actually only decided to cook this Mexican meal so that the bold flavours of the food would cover the taste of the poison to ensure that Stephen ate it. Which he did. Stephen gladly ate the meal, thinking that his daughter had lovingly prepared it for him. However, soon after, he began experiencing stomach pains. The pains got so intense that Marie ended up contacting Sandra, who again is Stephen's girlfriend, telling Sandra that her father wasn't feeling well. By the time Sandra got to the flat, she would realised that not feeling well was the understatement of the year. When she arrived, Stephen was foaming at the mouth and his limbs were going stiff, his eyes were glassy, and he did not acknowledge Sandra in the room. Despite the best efforts of paramedics who rushed to the scene, they were unable to revive Stephen, and he would be pronounced dead. His cause of death was later determined to have been from cardiac arrest/heart attack. And that very night, Marie got exactly what she wanted. Beth and Frank raced to the hospital, scooping her up and took her back home. It would be 11 months until Marie Robards confided in someone what she had done. While she was in high school, she was studying Hamlet with her friend Stacey High. When she asked her best friend, quote, "Do you think people can go through life without a conscience?" Stacey tried probing Marie, asking her what was wrong. Was she pregnant? Had she crashed her car? Before she jokingly asked her, "Well, you haven't killed someone, have you?" That is when Marie broke down and confessed to Stacey that yes, she had killed someone. She had poisoned her father. Stacey was sworn to secrecy. However, after weeks of knowing what Marie did, she started being eaten up with guilt. And what's worse, Stephen started appearing in Stacey's dreams, nightmares even, calling for help from the grave. Stacey would eventually tell her mum, a school counsellor, and then eventually the police. Using samples of Stephen's flesh and blood that were for some reason still in the mortuary, they were examined and it confirmed that Stephen Robards had in fact been poisoned. 18-year-old Marie would be arrested at the University of Texas, where she was studying medicine in order to become a pathologist. The interviewers said that when they got her in the interview room, they said all of 5 words before Marie completely confessed what she had done. She did later say, however, that she didn't intend or even want to kill her father. She just wanted to debilitate him and make him poorly enough so that he couldn't look after her. Marie Robards would be found guilty of the murder of Stephen Robards. She was handed a sentence of 27 years to serve. However, she was released in 2003 after serving only 7 years in prison. If you're interested in hearing more about this case in detail, I have just posted a full-length podcast episode over on my podcast True Crime with Caitlin, which is available to stream right now wherever you listen to your podcasts.
I honestly, one, couldn't believe that I haven't heard about this story, but more so, I too couldn't believe that it happened. She gave birth in a bathroom stall during her prom, put the baby in a trash can, and then returned to the dance. Very obviously talking about a baby. If you think that listening to this is going to harm your mental health in any way, shape, or form, please skip this video and I will see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves. I love you. Melissa Drexler lived in New Jersey. She was an only child to her parents, John and Marie Drexler, and the family was what people described to be a normal, happy family. Neighbors described the parents as supporting and loving, and Melissa was from all accounts a happy girl. She was a little bit shy, very polite. She had hobbies that she liked, a friend group that she hung out with. She was a senior at Lacey Township High School, and she was in a relationship with a boy called John Lewis. He was older, but they had been dating, I'm pretty sure, from the time that Melissa was a sophomore. In November of 1996, Melissa told her boyfriend that she was a little bit worried that she was pregnant because she missed her cycle that month. We know that because John then told one of his friends. However, he later came back and told him that everything was fine and it was a false alarm. June 6th of 1997 was a Friday, prom day. Melissa got ready, did her makeup, did her hair, put her dress on, and her and John drove together to prom with another couple. The prom was being held at an event space called the Garden Manor in Aberdeen. They got there around 7:30 p.m. On the drive there, Melissa told her friend that her stomach was hurting pretty bad. She had cramps. What she didn't tell her friend was that she was in fact 8.5 months pregnant and that her water broke that morning. Pretty much as soon as they got to prom, Melissa went to the bathroom and she was in there for a pretty long time, long enough that one of her friends started to worry. About 15 to 20 minutes in, the friend knocked on the stall door to check on Melissa, and Melissa just said, "I will be done pretty soon. Go tell the boys that I'll be right out." But then the friend started to hear something strange. It sounded like metal scraping against metal, and she noticed a small smear of red on the floor. And then she saw Melissa trying to wipe it away with the tip of her shoe. What no one realized at the time was that within those 20 minutes, Melissa had secretly given birth inside of that stall. According to her story, she delivered the baby directly into the toilet. She then cut the umbilical cord with the metal trash can, which likely explains the metal sound, scraping sound that her friend heard. She wrapped the newborn baby in some plastic trash bags, cleaned herself up, cleaned up the stall as best as she could, and then she walked out of the stall. She carried the bag with the baby to the main trash can, still inside of the bathroom, but outside of the stall. She tossed it in and then walked away as if nothing ever happened. She walked back out into the prom, went to go sit at the table with her boyfriend. She ate a salad and then danced with her boyfriend on the dance floor. The event space where the prom was being held had staff members, and it wasn't long before one of them went into the woman's bathroom to clean it, and when she did, she noticed an overwhelming amount of paper towels inside the trash can. She went to pull out the trash, pulled out the bag, walked it out of the bathroom, but when she was carrying it, she noticed that it was pretty heavy, unusually heavy, so she called over a maintenance worker. He picked up the bag, he felt the weight, and decided to look inside, which is when he saw the other bag inside. He opened it, and when he did, he made the horrifying discovery of finding the body of a tiny little baby. Police officers and paramedics were called immediately. As soon as they got there, they saw the little baby, which was a full-term baby boy. They began trying to do everything they could to get its little heart to start beating, but they couldn't. It was too late, and he was pronounced deceased at the scene. Melissa's friend knew that her stomach was hurting. She knew that she was in the bathroom for a very long time. She also saw the red on the bathroom stall, and after realizing what happened, she immediately went up to one of the teachers to let them know. The teacher then questioned Melissa, and Melissa said that yeah, she was in the bathroom stall for a very long time, but it wasn't because she was giving birth. It was only because she was having a heavy menstrual cycle. It wasn't until they told her that the body had been found that she admitted that yes, she had given birth. She was taken to the hospital and her parents were called, and the reaction of her parents and her boyfriend were both the same, both completely shocked, clueless, both saying, "No way, it can't be, there's no way." None of her friends knew, none of her classmates knew, nobody knew. Well, Melissa did. She later admitted that she was aware, that she said she purposefully kept it to herself because she was scared to tell anyone, scared of what they might say or do. And by the way, if you haven't heard of this before, someone not really showing or showing very, very little during a pregnancy, it can happen. There have been instances in which the mother doesn't show or shows very little to the point where it's easy to hide. And in this case, Melissa was one of those people. She even went with her friends and one of the friends' moms to go try on prom dresses, and that mom said that she wouldn't even guess that Melissa was pregnant because of how normal her stomach looked when she was trying on different prom dresses. In the autopsy, the medical examiner ruled that the baby was a full-term baby boy weighing 6 pounds, and the cause of death was ruled as, quote, asphyxia due to manual strangulation and obstruction of the external airway. A really important question for them to figure out was whether the baby was born alive or whether he was born born sleeping. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy really believed that the baby was born alive because he had air in his lungs. Melissa, however, was claiming that he was not, that he was born blue with the umbilical cord wrapped around him. 18-year-old Melissa Drexler was charged with murder and she was facing 30 years to life. She was released on bond and was able to return home with her parents. By this point, this was all over the news, all over the media, which is when she gained the name Prom Mom. Melissa's parents then ended up conducting a separate autopsy with a different forensic pathologist, and he ruled that it was not possible whether to say if the baby had been born alive or not. Reason being that the air in his lungs could have been from the resuscitation efforts that were performed when the paramedics were attempting to save him. In an interview, he stated, quote, "The autopsy findings are ambiguous as to whether the baby was alive because of all the resuscitation that was performed," end quote. So that was what the defense would be arguing in court, and the prosecution was growing concerned that the defense would somehow be able to prevent them from getting a conviction. Ultimately, Melissa Drexler accepted a plea deal and pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter. She stated, quote, "I knew I was pregnant. I concealed the pregnancy from everyone. On the morning of prom, my water broke. While I was in the car on the way to prom, I began having cramps. I went to the prom and I went into the bathroom and delivered the baby. The baby was born alive. And I knowingly took the baby out of the toilet and wrapped a series of garbage bags around the baby. I then placed the baby in another garbage bag, knotted it closed, and threw it in the trash can. I was aware of what I was doing at the time when I placed the baby into the bag, and I was further aware that what I did would most certainly result in the death of the baby," end quote. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, but on November 26 of 2001, she was released on parole after serving 3 years and 1 month. So she's been out, but I'm pretty sure she's now a mother of 2 and lives a pretty quiet life. Yeah, let me know if you've heard of this case before and what your thoughts are on it. But that is all I have for today's video. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
We've officially lost it. A woman filed for divorce because ChatGPT told her to. And I'm not talking about advice from an AI. I mean, she asked it to read into his coffee grounds, and next thing you know, this poor man is getting kicked out of his house. April of 2025, literally a month ago, this married couple with 2 kids are just sitting at home and they're pretty bored. The wife sees a TikTok trend of people asking AI to read their coffee cups like a fortune teller. So they brew 2 cups of coffee, they drink them, and then they snap a photo of the leftover coffee grounds at the bottom just for the laughs of it. Except when the wife uploads the 2 photos to ChatGPT, it spits out something wild. For her husband's cup, ChatGPT supposedly sees a young woman, but not just any woman, a woman whose name starts with the letter E. And according to AI, he is not just thinking about her, but he is fantasizing a future with her. Now, any normal person would laugh that off, right? Because AI doesn't even get my dinner order right half the time. But nope, she in fact took it as the full-on truth. She kicked him out right then and there, told her kids daddy's a cheater, we're getting a divorce, and called her lawyer, all solely based off of what ChatGPT read in a coffee cup. And when the husband obviously refused to just pack up and leave quietly, a lawyer served him divorce papers 3 days later. The excuse that she put on those papers was that AI coffee cup fortune told me to. You cannot make this up. The husband went on national TV and he's sitting there like, y'all, I thought this was a joke. He said it started off as just harmless fun, but then his wife just spiraled, and the crazy thing is this isn't even the first time. Apparently she spent an entire year obsessed with an astrologer's predictions before this, and now she's fully convinced an AI that can't even brew coffee for itself has somehow unlocked his deepest, darkest secrets. Meanwhile, his lawyer is literally out here fighting for his life in the media, calling this an absurdity of artificial intelligence. He suggests that maybe she shouldn't have custody of their kids if her life's decisions are based off of coffee stains and AI fortune tellers. And honestly, that is a valid concern. Online, people are absolutely losing it. One Reddit comment said, not only is AI coming for our jobs, but they're also ending marriages. Thank you for being here with me. I literally love you guys so much. You are all my true crime solving besties. And if you see someone brewing coffee and pulling out their phone, run.
So this teacher gets confronted, of course, because she essayed her 14-year-old student, but her lawyer would later say that she shouldn't go to prison because she was just, get this, too pretty to go to prison. Deborah LaFave was born in Riverview, Florida, and growing up, she was a pretty happy kid. She loved playing with toys. She was really close with her sister, and her sister would often play classroom. Deborah would pretend that she was a teacher, and she loved it, and it was from the time that she was a small child that she just knew that one day she wanted to make teaching her career. She graduated high school in 1998. She then went to the University of Florida, where she got a degree in English. And even though on paper you could look at her past, her family, her home life, and think that she had the perfect life, life, she did struggle with mental health issues. Growing up throughout her life, she went through periods where she felt deeply depressed, and her depression was at its peak, understandably so. During college, when she lost her sister, her older sister was 5 months pregnant when she was involved in a horrible car accident and she sadly passed away. Her loss was felt incredibly hard by her entire family, and it was something that affected Deborah a lot. Deborah has also claimed that she experienced SA herself when she was younger. She also had a difficult relationship with food, and overall she held a lot of trauma within her, which of course does not excuse what she goes on to do, but it certainly does give you an idea of why her mental health got to be in such a dark space throughout different periods of her life. It was also during college that she met her future husband, Owen LaFave. They start dating and they stayed together after she graduated in 2002. She got a job working as an English teacher at Greco Middle School in Temple Terrace, Florida, and following her first year teaching, her and Owen got married. At the middle school, Deborah was a well-liked person. The other teachers got along with her. Her students really liked her. Other staff members thought that she was a good, kind-hearted person. And I mean, she got really lucky with a job that she loved, but a job where she was loved and appreciated too. But then we got to April of 2004, and things got weird, and they only went downhill from there. That year, Deborah agreed to help the football coach at a tag football game, and it was there where she would meet the 14-year-old boy who would become her victim. Since he was a child, we're only going to be referring to him as M. M was not Deborah's student, but he knew of her because the boys at the school talked about Deborah all the time because she was so pretty and attractive and had this reputation of being the young and hot teacher. And boys having a crush on attractive adult females, fine, whatever, it's common, it happens. However, the adult should be the one with boundaries, should be the person who knows better, who shuts it down immediately and doesn't pay any attention to it because they're an adult and they should know that that is wrong. Well, the issue is that Deborah did not. At that football game, M, along with his friend, approached Deborah, and according to the friend, Deborah really seemed to like the attention that M was showing her. The following month, in May of 2004, Deborah chaperoned a field trip to SeaWorld. The students were going, and Deborah's husband Owen actually also went on the field trip, but even so, Deborah's attention was focused on this 14-year-old student to the point that Owen could tell that she was distracted, and he actually grew to have a gut feeling that Deborah was being unfaithful because she felt so distant. After that field trip, all of Deborah's attention went towards M. She started dressing differently, wearing shorter skirts and lower cut shirts. She started trying to spend more time with him at football games or in detention rooms or in classrooms, asking him to stay after class. And she also started asking him to stay after school to hang out. And it was in one of those times that she kissed him for the first time. And then it escalated to more and more intimate relations. They hadn't done it yet, but they were pretty much doing everything but. All while she was also kind of entertaining his friends at the same time. Sometimes she would ask them to stay after class. It was so weird. She loved the attention that she was getting, and she almost began to crave it, as disturbing as that sounds. On the last day of school, a student had a party and M was invited, and guess who also went? Deborah. Deborah shows up to hang out with M, and she's the only teacher at that party because of course, why would a teacher be there? And they were seen together being super friendly with one another. I'm pretty sure M referred to Deborah as his girlfriend at one point. And also, where are the parents of the kid throwing the party? I have so many questions. I don't get it, but this shows that Deborah's behavior was not only disturbing but also careless. By this point, we're now heading into summer break. Deborah is texting M all the time. They're talking on the phone. She's confessing her feelings for him, completely manipulating him, saying that she likes the fact that their relationship is not allowed, opening up about her marriage and how she was having struggles there, which of course she was. And she even started talking about how she wanted to get a job at the high school that he was going to, only so that she could be closer to him. And then they go all the way. They do it. And then they do it again in her car. And then they do it again at her house. And all this happens in the span of like 4 weeks, okay, just to give you an idea of a timeline and how fast this was moving. One day, Deborah decides to drive M to go see his cousin, which is like an hour drive away. She picks up the cousin, they're all hanging out, she takes them for ice cream, she buys a souvenir for her husband. Like, she really doesn't think that anything is wrong with what she's doing, but a friend of the cousin's mother sees M and his cousin in the car with this older woman and thinks this is weird, something is off about this, something is going on. That person calls the cousin's mother calls her sister, which is M's mom. So when M gets home, his mom is like, hey, who were you with? Who is this woman? What are you doing? What's going on? And he kind of shrugs it off. He doesn't really want to talk about it. He says that nothing is up. But the mom is concerned, and rightfully so, and she keeps pressing him until M eventually tells her the truth, that he has had intimate relations with this teacher from his middle school, and he tells his mom her name. Deborah somehow finds out that M's mom now knows, and what does she do? She calls her directly. She doesn't call her to apologize, say sorry, anything like that. She just calls her to, I guess, explain the situation and try to excuse her behavior. She's just kind of like, yeah, this happened. Please don't yell at your son. The mom is fuming. She's also concerned and worried and disturbed, but also sad for her son because her son is a kid and he is a victim. And the adult in the situation, Deborah, is clearly manipulative and unable to see that what she has done is wrong. The mom does the right thing. In June of 2004, she immediately goes to the authorities, who begin looking into this and gathering evidence, and they come up with a plan to arrest Deborah. First, they want Deborah to admit that she knew what she was doing and to admit her actions. So they think the best way for them to do this is to record phone conversations between her and M. So they tell M what to say on the phone, and he calls Deborah, and she just falls straight into the trap, confirming that they were intimate. Authorities then tell M to invite Deborah to his house, claiming that his mom wouldn't be home so the two of them could hang out. And of course, she immediately agrees to come over and spend the day with him, but as soon as she got to his house, she's met with police officers and she is finally arrested. She's charged in 2 different counties, in the county in which she was a teacher in, and the different county where she had driven M to go see his cousin. The trial was set to begin in November of 2004, but right before the trial started, the victim's family found out that Court TV planned to cover it live and that they were not going to be protecting his identity. M was already having such a hard time with the entire situation. It was really taking a mental toll on him, and his mother thought that if he had to testify on Court TV, it would only make things worse. His cousin, who was also supposed to testify, said that he also wouldn't feel comfortable testifying if the cameras were on. On top of that, it wouldn't just be one trial. There were going to have 2 separate trials in the separate counties, and M's family just could not imagine having to go through the same process twice. Because of all of that, the painful decision was made that sending Deborah LaFave to prison wasn't worth putting M through that kind of trauma, so they asked prosecutors to work out a deal that would avoid having to go to trial altogether. The defense, of course, agreed because they didn't want their client, Deborah, to go to prison, and his lawyer then stated that she was too pretty to go to prison, which is literally vile. In the end, Deborah LaFave pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years of community control and 7 years of probation. Her husband divorced her. She did have to register as an offender, and of course she had to surrender her teaching license, but still no prison time. Deborah now lives a quiet, low-profile life in Florida. She's a mom of 2, and she is married not to the father of her kids, but to another guy. No prison time is actually the craziest thing that I've ever heard in my life. Anyway, that is all I have for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on this case. Also, guys, just by the way, new podcast episode dropping tomorrow. I'm so eager to talk about that one with you and hear your thoughts on that, because I'm not going to spoil it, but just, yeah. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
This is the story of Benjamin Elliott. Benjamin and Megan Elliott were twins. The two were raised in Katy, Texas. Benjamin was known to be smart, funny, soft-spoken, but Megan was more on the sensitive side. When the two would be in settings, she would cling to her brother. She was later diagnosed with autism. Benjamin started showing signs of parasomnia in his mid-teens, which is a sleeping disorder that people experience abnormal behaviors while they're sleeping. It's kind of like you're half awake, half sleep. He was known to sleepwalk, so with his parasomnia, the part of the brain that controls the movement was active, but the awareness and the judgment was still off. Typically, when people are in that episode, they can't form memories, and Benjamin has never been violent with his episodes until September 28th, 2021. It was a normal night. Benjamin and his father Michael stayed up playing video games, and Benjamin noticed a military style knife that his father had, and he was admiring it. He was telling his father how much he liked the knife, and his father said, "You know what? You can have it." At 4:40 a.m. now, September 29th, 17-year-old Benjamin is calling 911. He told the dispatcher, "I stabbed my sister. Oh my God, I thought it was a dream. I stabbed her in her neck. I stabbed her. Please, can y'all hurry? I don't want her to die." The operator instructed Benjamin to start CPR while police were on their way. That's when he started yelling for his mom and his dad. When the police arrived, EMS took over CPR, but Megan was pronounced dead at the scene. They took Benjamin outside. He had seemed to be really shooken up. They handcuffed him and put him in the back of a squad car. He told the police that he didn't deserve any respect because he killed his sister, but in the back of the squad car, while he was sitting there, while the police were processing the crime scene, he had sat there for like 3 hours. He started talking to the officer about college plans, about the SATs. Then he just out the blue asked the officer, have you ever had a realistic nightmare where everything felt real, but it was a little off? And the officer thought that was a little weird. He then went on to describe how he felt when he stabbed his sister, like his movements and sticking a knife in and out. They took Benjamin down to the station for further interrogation, and that's when he told the detectives that he fell asleep around 2:30, 3 a.m. And the next thing he knew, he was in Megan's room standing over her with a knife in her neck. He said it was a realistic nightmare, and the only reason he knew that it wasn't a nightmare is from Megan's scream. So when he heard her scream, he panicked, took the knife out, got a pillow to cover her wound, ran, turned the light on, and went to go get his phone to call 911. And during this whole interrogation, when the police are asking him questions about where things are in his house, instead of his house, he's saying the crime scene. And the police thought that that was suspicious. But by midday, they had charged him with murder and locked him up. His bond was $100K, and his parents quickly paid that bond, and he was released. He was released for 3 whole years until his trial started. But during that 3 years, shit had changed drastically for their family. This is their parents right here, Michael and Katie, and they had to move in with Katie's mother. And Michael had to sleep outside of Benjamin's door in a chair until they installed an alarm on his door. As the case went on, the medical examiner found that Megan was stabbed twice, not one time, and one of the cuts were 4 inches deep, severing her artery and her jugular vein. Benjamin told the police that he went to sleep between 2:30 and 3 a.m., but his cell phone data showed that he was up until 4:17 a.m. The 911 call came in at 4:40 a.m. So they're trying to figure out in that little length of time, could he get into a deep sleep and fall into an episode? His parents thought it could be a psychotic break because Katie's father was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But after his psychiatric evaluation, it was no evidence of schizophrenia nor being bipolar. A neurologist did 2 sleep studies that were 6 weeks apart. He concluded that Benjamin suffered from obstructive sleep apnea, which triggered sleepwalking. He said Benjamin can enter slow waves of sleep in as little as 11 minutes, which means that 23-minute window from his phone data to the 911 call, they're saying he had time to be unconscious and commit this crime. Benjamin had a 30-year plea deal on the table, but he declined. His trial began February 18th, 2025, and the back and forth was mainly him falling asleep that fast, committing that crime, and calling 911. Is it possible? Defense team just felt like that's just not possible. Their mother said Benjamin had no reason to kill his sister. The trial lasted 7 days. On February 24th, Benjamin was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole after serving half his sentence. And this case was very interesting to me because I don't know. It's some inconsistencies in here because how are you suffering from parasomnia? And parasomnia say it's no memory. But you remembered everything that happened. And then the cell phone data, just because the cell phone was stopped being used at 4:17, y'all just assume he was asleep. How y'all know? What if he was just laying there? What if he was watching TV? I don't know, because he do have history with his sleep being fucked up. So what do y'all think about this? This is an interesting one.